how the makerspace is turning out. All right, so today what we want to go through, or what I want you guys to kind of start to experience, is working a little bit more directly inside of Unity. Now last week we had just kind of a simple overview of what it takes to go from Modo over into Unity. And we did that overview just to kind of remind and showcase the importance of that material setup. Because over in Unity, the materials play a much more direct role in our modeling sequence than they do, or excuse me, in our authoring of our scene than they do here in Modo. So it's an important idea. We're going to see that again today.
I just remembered a quick question I wanted to ask. Should all your things be on a single mesh item and only one UV map?
No. Well, we'll get to that in a minute. Okay. But yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be on one mesh item. I think it's encouraged, yeah, but not necessarily. Let me turn off the lights and we'll get to it. Excuse me. All right. So this is my forge. You guys saw this last week or the week before. No, I'll shut the door. It's fine. I like it. Makes us feel like we're outside a little bit. Sometimes the outside comes inside. Okay.
I don't like the inside for this exact reason.
All right. Okay. So let's just talk for a second on the prep that we need to do to make sure that everything in my scene file begins to make the trip over into Substance Painter and then onto Unity itself. Okay. Now, last week when we were talking, we didn't really talk about Substance Painter at all because we want to use that tiling texture workflow. However, if you're smart, you can use that file in Substance Painter and over in Unity. You can still do this. This is an Fbx file. The file that Unity wants is in Fbx. Okay. All right, so let's look at some big picture ideas, because this prep work is really important. Now, for me, I know that on my scene file, the item that I'm going to export out is my rough. Okay, this is the, and I'll change the name of it here in a second. As a reminder, in our game art pipeline, we can have one mesh item, but each mesh item can only have one UV map. Okay, so each mesh item, this is a rule. Okay, this is a hard and fast rule. One UV map per mesh item. Okay? Now, our scenes are going to be collections, at times large collections, of a lot of different meshes, and that's by design. That's okay. But one UV map per mesh item. Okay? The game engine doesn't have the ability for us to go in and pick and choose which UV map to use. It's relatively unintelligent in that regard. Okay? I think you're going to find when you're working inside of a real-time rendering engine, there's a level of discipline that we need to have. Unity, Unreal, Lumberyard, and they don't pull any punches. They kind of assume that you know what you're doing. Okay? So let me just triple check this. So I got on my lists. Here's UV maps. Forged parts, cool. Now, what we name this, it doesn't really matter because we're not actually ever going to get access to the name of this UV map over in Unity. Okay, it's just going to show up as, I think it just shows up as UV map 0, if I remember correctly. So the name of it doesn't really matter. But notice on mine, it's just the singular one, so I'm good to go. That's step numero uno. Now, if you have multiple UV maps per this for this mesh item, what are you to do? Are you up a creek? Excuse me. So I like that strategy. That's one way of approaching the problem, Charlie. We can start separating out those UV maps into their own mesh item. That's cool. That will work. What's another way that we can do this? Collapse all of our UV maps into one. Okay, that's another way of working. Okay, we can cut and paste UVs from one map to another. That works as well. Okay, I'm all ready to go here. I'm not going to go in and do a tremendous amount of work on my UVs. If you look at it, I think this is the version that's not packed. But this is fine. You can have, I'm going to be utilizing that tiling texture workflow that we talked about last week. So we can absolutely have all of our UVs outside of our 0 to 1 space. Now in the tiling texture workflow, I don't care so much about, bingo, the size of the UV islands to each other. What is that called? Pop quiz, hot shots. Bum. Bingo. Our density, yeah, our textile density. So we want the textile density of all the UV islands to be the same. So in layman's terms, we just want all of our UV islands to be proportional to each other. Okay? so that each one of our UV islands uses the same kind of pixel resolution as the other UV islands. Okay? Let's just do that real fast, because I really don't think that some of my guys have the correct textile density. Now, what's an easy way for us to do this? Pack. Pack will do it automatically for us, which is cool, right? We like the pack command. It's going to put everything in that 0 to 1 space. We don't necessarily need it to be in that 0 to 1 space, but it will do it, which is cool. Now, there's another way we can do it. If you look over here in our UV toolset, we actually have a textile density pop-out. Yeah. Now, watch what happens when I do this, okay? Because now we can say, hey, let's sample the textile density. Really, what it comes down to is that we can tell the computer the size of the texture that we're going to be placing on these UV islands, and then we can have all of our UV islands not really necessarily match that quality, but get real close to it. Okay. There's apply individually, apply overall. Okay. So let's do this. Let's see. I'm going to grab the textile density of. Let's just tear this off for a second. Let's see. Here's some of the beams and what have you. All right, so let's sample the textile density. Okay, now that's the value right there. Let's see if I can make this bigger. Nope. Okay, there's the textile density value, 793. So if I unhide all of my other UV islands and just do apply overall, now, oh, looks like I did a good job before. Good job, Pat. Now all those UV islands have the exact same textile density. Oops, I hit apply over. I want to apply individually. Did it wrong. I'm sorry. If you apply it overall, it's going to look at the textile density of all the UV islands as a group. It's not going to individually scale up each of the islands like we wanted to, or like it does in the pack command. I misspoke earlier. I apologize. So now, apply individually. And at the very least, all of my UV islands have the exact same textile density. Think of it kind of like the quality of it. They're going to have the exact same quality. The texture is going to look the same. The tiling texture is going to look the same on each one of these UV islands across the entirety of my model. So that's another way to adjust the textile density of all of our UVs. All right, I'm pretty happy with this. Let's go over and explore the contents of our shader tree, because this is the last big step when it comes to getting this model file prepped and ready to rock and roll for a life over inside of Unity. Okay. Now there's some things in here that I need to clean up. Remember, when we export out into Fbx, it's going to grab a whole bunch of stuff. Most importantly, it's going to be the materials that are associated with the mesh item that we're choosing to export. Okay. So let's keep, I always like to go in and make sure that everything is named real cleanly. I also like to go in and look to see if there's any polygons that are currently associated with the base material. Remember, we know likely the base material. We want every single polygon on our mesh to be assigned to its own material group. These little icons here, these are folders, right? Every polygon gets tagged to a folder. Nothing gets assigned to the base material. Is there a fast way for me to see which polygons are currently associated with the base material?
Yes, it was in the lists. The list tab.
Bingo.
That's me. I know.
Yeah. So lists, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Mike. Now where are we going?
We're going to statistics.
Stats. Yep. Polygons.
Material.
You got it. By material. Okay.
Plus, where's my cookie?
I have one on my desk. You can have it. No, I'm joking.
Oh.
I'm not gonna give away my cookie.
You got my hopes.
I'm joking. Yeah. So this is going to show you a really great list of all the material tags that are currently active inside of your scene, right? Because every time we select some polygons and hit the M key, it creates a material tag, a polygon tag, and that's what we're looking at here, right? So I got chimney, roof, walls, woods. I should change that. It should be wood beams. Okay. What's default? The base material. Okay. So we know likely the default material. Nothing should be, or let me rephrase this. Everything should be specifically assigned, right, There shouldn't be any question when we're looking at the materials in Unity as to their function and role in describing the overall model. Okay? Default is about the most useless word on the face of the planet, right? What in the world is default? How are you going to describe default? When we're working within a team structure, default now becomes ambiguous, right? It can mean many different things, and we want to remove that unknown meaning. So let's just remove it from our system. Now, one of the cool things that I like about the Lists tab is that you can hit these plus and minus signs over here. And these are going to add or subtract polygons from a selection. Now, I don't have anything selected, so hitting the plus sign, bloop, I'm going to grab all the polygons that are currently assigned to the base material. And there are a lot of them in there. Okay? Many apologies. So now I get to pick and choose what I want to do with these. I have no idea what I'm going to do with these. Some of these should probably be assigned to other parts. Here, we'll just do material, hit the M key. And we'll call, I don't know, miss parts, because I'm being lazy. There we go. All right. Now, check it out. What has removed itself from this list? Defaults. Okay? Now, every polygon in my entire scene file has been assigned to an appropriate and hopefully clearly, kind of designed material group. Okay, which is a good structure. This is a good foundation. This makes it very clean and easy for us to see how things are working over inside of Unity. Okay. One of the things that I like to do, and this is just a habit that I've gotten into, is that to really make sure that this base material doesn't influence and affect my scene file that I'm sending over to Unity, is that I delete it. I delete the base material. Since it's no longer a part of my system, why have it around? Bye-bye base material. And if things drastically change, if what was, pink now turns blue, something's changed. That something was still tagged with that base material. So it's a good way of, triple checking things. Okay? All right, I'm ready to rock and roll. I've cleaned up my item list. I've cleaned up my UV map list. I have one UV map for the mesh item I'm going to export. I've cleaned up my shader tree. I've made sure that everything has been assigned to its own independent, very clearly named material group. I've removed the role of the base shader or the base material from my entire shader tree, and I'm ready to export. Woo! Let's do this. How are we going to export?
So you do actually need just one UV map?
One UV map per mesh item.
Oh, okay.
Yep. If you're exporting multiple mesh items, then that rule still kind of applies, right? So if you have two mesh items, one UV map for one mesh item, one UV map for another mesh item. All right, so I'm ready to rock and roll. I want to get this thing out of Modo and into a format that I can use over inside of Unity. What am I doing? Where am I going to do this? So, and I like where Kevin's going here, and you're right. You don't necessarily have to do this. I find it a good practice to actually do this. And what specifically Kevin's talking about is that he remembered that I went in last week and I changed my export properties inside of my global mode of preferences. Okay? And specifically, I think, where did I go? I went into the Fbx IO section down here. And I turned off save cameras, save lights, and save animation. With those three things disabled, I'm only sending my materials, my geometries, and of course, my geometries? That's weird. My materials, my geometry, and then my UVs as well. Okay? That's a good practice to get into, especially when we're just sending out models that we're going to be used to describe a much more complex scene. All right. Okie dokie day. All right, what's next? Oh, it's in moments like this that I want to give an actual quiz. Adrian. Yeah. Bingo. Just like we've been doing over in the Substance Painter to get things out and ready for Substance Painter. Okay. So I want to export this guy out. So right-click, export selected layers. Okay. Here's what I don't want you to do. This is bad juju. Okay, File, Export As. This is the wrong way of doing this. Okay? What is this going to do? Everything. Okay? Everything is going to go into one mesh item. Okay? Now, if you have a whole bunch of pieces that you're trying to export out as one thing, you may want to look at this, give it a try. But generally speaking, inside of our modeling workflow, this is not a good practice. Okay? I like doing it like this for the following reasons. Okay? You can select one thing, or you can select multiples. You can select multiple mesh items and export them out as a group together. Whoop, export selected layers, plural. Okay? This is really the best way, the contextual menu inside the item list, because now we're telling the computer exactly, and I mean exactly which mesh items or which parts of our larger scene file that we want to send out as a group together. That file export as is buggy, okay, and I have seen it cause problems. There's mysteries associated with it. The easiest way to do it is this method here. Okay. All right. Which format am I going to choose? FBX. Just like we've been doing. FBX 2018. Excuse me. And we'll hit OK. Give it a good name.
Wait, did you check mark any of the export all layers, separate files, just layers?
You know, in the 2018 version of the FBX exporter, having just layers off is OK.
But the other two check marks.
Actually, they were all disabled. They were all turned off.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Alrighty, so here's the file. Woohoo! This is cool. One other thing, if this doesn't work, if this doesn't go over into Unity, you actually have two other options. The Fbx file format is probably the most robust interchange format that we have inside of our current kind of generation of tools, but it's not the only one. Okay, it's kind of like the most advanced, right? If this doesn't work, if this causes problems for you going into Unity, there's two others that I like to draw focus to. It's the same thing, but this time, Colada 1.41. This is another great file format. Okay? The Colada file format is an open source file format, meaning that it's not owned or operated by any one individual or corporation. So that's pretty cool. It's got a nice kind of ecosystem surrounding it. A lot of apps use the Colada file format.
I hope this is not too off topic, but how would you export animations into Unity?
Through the Fbx file format. And we talk a lot about that in 426. In 426, we actually do that. Yeah. The other one that's good is just an object file. Good old-fashioned OBJ, as they're called. The object file has been around since basically day one in our world, right? The Colada file, it'll bring materials, it'll bring material characteristics. There's a lot of stuff that it's going to extract from the shader tree. The object file is basically just geometry. I mean, if nothing else works, pop out an OBJ, because what you're going to get is just a geo, right? It's a pretty unintelligent file. It's just your raw wireframes. It's very light, very easy to use. It's been around in our industry since day one, so it's a good old school file format, and it works pretty well. The one that I'm really kind of most interested in seeing develop is the GetF file format. This is new, by the way. This just popped up, 3 or 4 months ago. Facebook. Yeah, you got it. This is a product of mobile devices and OpenGL, or excuse me, WebGL devices, kind of doing more in the 3D space. I believe it's also an open source file format. that Facebook is using to do all of their in-feed 3D stuff. I don't know if you guys have seen this yet. Have you guys seen this on Facebook where you can post a 3D model in your news feed in Facebook? You can flip it around and orbit it. To do that, you export this file format. This is the one that Facebook will adopt. There's an export. Yeah, it's kind of gained some steam at the moment, right? A lot of companies are starting to use it.
Right now, an active challenge for Substance Painter to use that file type to create
Cool.
a Snapchat object that you painted. It's a rubber duck
Awesome.
that you painted in Substance Painter.
Snapchat object?
Yeah, it's like in Snapchat, you know, you can see like, you can be like, oh, it's a 3D duck on my friend's head. Like, depending on where you hold it around, it moves
Yeah, I
the
don't use
object.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. This is
Do I look like a 13-year-old girl?
Well, I don't use it either, but Snapchat has a 3D option.
yeah.
That is pretty interesting.
And Snapchat also has a developer marketplace. If Snapchat hadn't just tanked in its stock prices the other day, I would have been encouraging you guys to develop things for the Snapchat platform, but I'm not entirely sure if Snapchat's going to make it over the next couple of years. What's the problem with Snapchat, by the way?
I don't know anyone that uses it is the problem for me.
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot of tech companies. You guys should be aware of this as you guys are about to enter into the technology world as game designers. What's the problem with Snapchat? Say again? Yeah, the name doesn't really give you a whole lot of information as to what it is. Well, it's a technology platform that doesn't really sell anything, right? What is the product that Snapchat sells? Itself. Your pictures, right? That's all it does. Yeah, and your information these days, right? Yeah, there's a lot of companies out there that rely exclusively on their customers' own kind of intellectual property to develop their value. Snapchat is such a great example of that. They don't actually sell anything, right? Their value comes from their installation of their user base, right? Which is why their stock prices have crashes. It's crashing right now because everyone's realizing, oh, they don't actually do anything. They don't actually sell anything. They don't make any money off anything. So why are we investing in this?
What you're telling me is that we need microtransactions for dick pics.
All right, let's keep going.
That would be terrible.
Okay, so now that we got our file format out,
$5.99.
we can start working. We can start working inside of Unity. So last time when we talked about Unity, I mentioned that there's one thing that's most valuable inside of our Unity kind of authoring pipeline. What is that one thing? Does anyone remember what it's called? Let's launch Unity here real fast. Excuse me. Unity's taking his merry old time opening today.
Repeat that. Making the file? I couldn't hear. It was too loud. Was it making the file?
Making the file, yeah. That project directory becomes the most valuable asset inside of your entire thumb drive, right? Because remember, when we're creating a new project, Unity is going to create a singular folder. And all of the contents, all the assets for our game, every animation, model, script, material, or music file is going to be in one place, right? So it then becomes the most important file on our entire thumb drive. Let's make a new project here real fast. Excuse me. I apologize for the live stream. Just listen to me sneeze. I want one of those cough buttons they have on radio. Do you guys know they have that on radio? They have a gigantic cough button. Because if you need to cough, you hit the cough button. It basically mutes all of the input sources. So you can cough, and you won't hear it on the radio. And then when you release the button, now your mic's live again. Yeah. It's all an illusion, right? It's all an illusion. Yeah. Anyways, okay. You actually hear it all the time on radio. If you listen very carefully, you can hear people hit the cough button. Okay. Yeah. Seriously, they'll be talking. Then like I listen to a lot of news talk radio. Then they'll be talking. And there'll be dead silence for like 2 or 3 seconds, and someone hit the button as they coughed or something. All right. Anyways. Yeah. Well, they're supposed to, right? But our finger quote definition of profanity is now changing, unfortunately. Okay, anyways, back to this. We've digressed. All right. So when we're starting a new project file, be very, very mindful of the name of your project file. Think of this as the name of your game, okay? What don't you want it to be named?
Game 1.
New Unity project, okay? You have to change this. Give it something with a little bit more meaning than new Unity project, because that has no meaning associated with it, right? So I'm going to call my game Pat's Forge, okay? You have to manage this, by the way, okay?
Looks like it could be a game.
Could be a name. Why not? Pat's Forge. You two get to come in and fight ninja cows while making hammers and stuff. I don't know. Yeah. Now I really want to see something with ninja cows, right? Ninja cows from Mars. Right? There you go. Anyway, okay. This is important, and I hope that you guys hear this. You have to manage this. If you don't know what you named your game, guess what? I don't know what you named your game. Okay? There is no, magical pixie dust that I can sprinkle over your computer to help you figure out what your name your project folder is. I'm going to guess that it's going to be New Unity Project. That's my guess, right? That's my exclusive guess, okay? But if you don't know the name of your game and it's not New Unity Project, guess what? You're up a creek, okay? You're up a creek without a paddle, okay? You got to manage this, okay? In addition, the other thing that you have to manage, and welcome to being a real-time artist, okay, is you got to know where you save the file, okay? Once again, I'm not going to know where you saved it, okay? This location is going to be different on each computer based off who's created a file before you sat down that day, okay? Out of habit, and this is a good habit, I put everything on the desktop. The desktop is a great place. It kind of becomes a clearinghouse. It becomes kind of a work area where it's easy to find things, okay? It's a great place to save your files initially. So the name of my game is going to be Pat's Forge. It's going to be on the desktop. Of course, I want to make a 3D game. This is important here because the tool set and the interface is going to be different based off of what these radio buttons say. And of course, the last but not least, create project. Now, Unity is going to take over. It's creating a huge database on my desktop right now inside of a folder called Pat's Forge. Okay. Let it cook. There's a lot of stuff, as you can see, that it's loading in. Let it do its thing. All right. Voila! We're up and running. Before we get into this, let's just return to our desktops real fast and look at what we created, because there it is. Okay. This is my project directory. This is my game. Everything for my game is in one folder now. Okay. If we were to open up that folder and check out the contents of it, here it is. No touchy. No touchy the contents of this folder. Okay. It's a great, easy way of messing up your game. There's a lot of stuff in here that Unity is reading and writing at the exact same time. Now, per our conversation last week, what's the only folder that you're allowed to mess with in here? The assets folder. That's the only one. Don't mess with the library. Don't mess with the temp. All that stuff. You need every last one of these, so no touchy. Okay? You will break your game. Let's jump back over into Unity for a second and get to work. Okay, so last week we kind of went over the basics of working inside the Unity interface. We'll continue that today a little bit. What's the first thing you should do when you jump into Unity? Before you import into any asset? Save a scene. And you're right. Whoever said that, you're absolutely right. If the project directory is like your game, what is the scene file? A level within inside that game. So we always want to be working on a current level. Right now, if we look at what the application frame is communicating to us, and this is actually a really great way of seeing what's going on. Okay, so this is going to tell us the current Unity build, the name of the scene. I don't have a scene, so it's just saying Untitled. The name of my game, Pat's Forge, and then the platform that I'm creating this game on. So right now I'm using the default settings, which will allow us to create a PC, Mac, or Linux standalone game. FYI, you can easily transition this over into creating iOS or Android games, or if you have a dev kit for like the Xbox One, you can use Unity to make a game for any number of those platforms. And then it's telling us the draw engine that it's using. For us here on the Mac, of course, we're using OpenGL. And if you're on the Windows side, if you're using a PC box, what would be your drawing architecture? DirectX. So it's going to be a little different if you're authoring something on a PC. All right. So let me save a scene file here real fast. Save scene as. Okay. And I'm just going to call this level 1. Now, before I hit just save, look where it's trying to save this file. Yeah. Cool, huh? Everything is getting piped into that assets folder. Let it. Okay? Let it. That's where we want to save all of our Unity-specific stuff. If I hide Unity and return to my desktop, bloop, here's that assets folder that I just saved my scene file into. And there it is. Okay? This is a live folder. Anything that we create that shows up in our asset directory inside, or my asset tab inside of Unity, is going to show up in my assets directory here inside of my project. All right. So now I have a project, my game. I have a level, a scene inside of my game. Now I want to start populating my level with some stuff. How do I import in my Forge? Who said it? Well, and you're right. Whoever said it, you're absolutely right. You can drag and drop. That's a great way of working. What's another way? Frank?
Right-click on assets.
I love it. So you can go downstairs into your project tab.
Oh, I just remembered another way. You can actually go to the assets folder and then just drag and drop it.
I love it. That's the third way. We can actually drag and drop assets into the assets folder in our project folder. Yeah, that works too.
The third way is so you don't get a copy.
We'll come back to that idea here in a minute. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's import my asset in. Let me go find it. Grab the Fbx. All right. Now, last week we talked a little bit about how these assets come in to Unity, right? And I think the Project Explorer down here at the bottom of our interface does a really great job of communicating all the different game components that are all linked together to make the actual asset itself. Because remember, it's not just one thing anymore, right? Unity works inside this game component architecture where we have a whole bunch of individual parts and pieces that are all linked together to create an asset, a game object. It's kind of like your car, right? A car is really just a collection of a whole bunch of different parts and pieces. Individually, these pieces would have their own kind of identity. You have a transmission, an engine. Of course, got to have a banging stereo, which my car does not. Individually, they all have their own identity. But once we start combining them together in a meaningful capacity, now they turn into something far greater. Okay, we're working in the same idea. We have geometry and materials that all work together to create a game object. We can start to see all of those parts and pieces if we open up the disclosure arrow inside of our project tab. Bloop. Here they all are. So here's the mesh item itself. Now check this out. This is pretty cool. What's it named? I know it's kind of hard to see. It's small. Let me make it bigger. Rough. But wait a minute. I changed the name of my file when I exported from Modo, right? I changed it. So if you look at the original Fbx file, it's just forge.fbx. So where's this word rough coming from? The mesh. Okay? Check this out. If we go back over into Unity, or Modo, excuse me, check it out. It actually pulled the mesh item's name from my item list over into Unity, even though I changed the file name, right? This is why we have to have a certain degree of discipline when working inside the game art pipeline. Because when we're sending and receiving information from one app to another, we need to be aware of how this data is being piped through. Okay? So if you wanted to make it a little bit more clear, if I wanted everything to be named Forge, I would change this name from Rough to Forge. That way, I probably should have done that anyways. It would have been a little bit more clear, I think, inside the larger system that I'm creating. Okay, so back over into Unity now. So this thing, remember, this is the game object itself. The game object is made and constructed from a whole series of smaller bits and pieces. This, if we click on it, you can kind of get a better idea, excuse me, a better idea of what its function is by looking at the inspector. Because the inspector is always going to show you all the different parts and pieces, right? It's in every sense, it's kind of like the properties tab that we've been used to working with over inside of Modo. So here we have the rough object selected. You can see pretty quickly all the different pieces that are working together to create this object. We have our transform component, our mesh filter component, and the mesh filter basically is going to determine which bits of geometry are going to be rendered. Okay. Right below it, we actually have the mesh renderer, and this is the physical game object that pipes in all of this data over to the renderer so that the renderer can draw it. In addition, we also have a whole series of materials that are associated with this one game object. You can see all that stuff down here, including this thing. What is that? It's a texture group. I forgot to... Texture group. That's this thing down here. I forgot to delete that folder. Okay. If I had exported with just layers on, that texture group probably would not have come for the trip. But it's not a deal breaker in this particular situation. See how it really does pull everything with it? Okay. All right. Questions so far? Everyone cool? One suggestion, and this is a suggestion that I like to make. Okay. Now please note that I have selected the game object itself. So the parent, the master controller of all these different parts and pieces down in my assets folder. Okay. The inspector tells me some really cool things. Now in this version of Unity, it wants to embed all of the materials in the file itself, and I find that pretty cumbersome to work with. Okay. So here's one small suggestion that I would recommend to make it really easy. Excuse me, to work with all these files. Is hit Extract Materials. I don't have a materials folder yet. Oh, I'm sorry, not Extract Materials. Use External Materials, and confused my terminology. So it's under the location. Use external materials. This is the old way of doing it, and I find it a little bit easier to work with all this stuff. Now, you haven't done anything until you hit the gigantic apply button. Now, what this does, it creates a folder full of materials. If you look here, we no longer have that long list of materials inside the game object. They're in a folder now. Now I have something that I can use in a lot of different capacities. I've unlinked the materials from the actual asset itself, which allows me to reuse these materials in a lot of different ways, right? It's pretty cool. You'll see the power of this, I think, going forward. It's a pretty neat way of working. Because we don't want to have a zillion different materials. We just want to have maybe a handful that we're using on a lot of different mesh items. All right. Now, with that in mind, let's go back into my assets folder. How do I get this game object into my scene? Drag and drop. You got it. And there's a couple different ways that I can drag and drop it. I can drag it from my assets directory down here into my hierarchy. Bloop. That works. There she blows. Okay. What's another way I can do it? Yep, just drag it into the viewport, and we're good to go. Now the difference between them is that when we drag it into the view, I'm interactively placing it inside of my scene, which is cool. If I drag it right into my hierarchy, please don't crash. There we go. It's going to put it at the origin of the scene. So a couple different ways of working with it. All right, questions on this idea so far? Now's an excellent time to get up, stretch your legs for a minute, because then we're going to talk about how we can use the terrain tools inside of Unity to start building a really cool environment. Sound good? Just take a small little break. All right. Okay. Excuse me. All right, all right. Okay. So, last week, this is about as far as we went, right? Just getting it into Unity. Because last week, one of the things I wanted to showcase was just how the material setup process works and the role of the materials. Because materials play a much more central role in Unity than they did over in Modo. Not to say that they're minimized in Modo, but it's definitely the focus, or one of the bigger focuses here in Unity. Now, this is cool. I like this. But this isn't something that we can play, right? This isn't really a game yet. This is just an asset floating in an infinite sphere, okay? So let's start working on developing some additional game objects that we now can start playing a game. It's going to be pretty fun, okay? So my big picture goal here is that I need to have some sort of environment, some sort of ground that maybe my little forge can sit on. And then I'm also going to need to craft some sort of game controller that will allow me to tool around my scene, use the ASWD keys to walk around my forge, check it out just like I would in any other first-person game. Okay? Let's do the low-hanging fruit first. Let's start looking at ways that we can start to add an environment. Okay? Even though we've been importing a whole bunch of stuff into Unity, that's not to say that we can't build a whole lot in Unity. I'm actually looking very much forward to 4.26 with you guys because we'll be able to play with the latest and greatest version of Unity, which I think is about to come out this week or next week. The 2018 version of Unity comes with something called Pro Builder, and we're going to play a lot with Pro Builder in the fall when you guys come back for 4.26. Pro Builder will basically allow us to do some 3D modeling in Unity. It's very cool. It's very rad. You guys are going to love it. It's a lot of fun. So we can build a lot of stuff in Unity. That's the big picture idea. Remember, though, in the Unity space, what we're working with here are called game objects. Okay? Game objects are like items over in Modo. So if we go back up to the top of our screen here, the game object pull-down menu will allow us to create a whole bunch of different things. Specifically, I'm in my 3D objects, and I'm going to create just a plane. There it is. Ah, awesome. That's not so hot, though. It's kind of in the middle of my house. Okay. Now, why did it do that? Let's look at the transform section. Now, why didn't it get placed at the origin? And it didn't. If you look at the transform component, it's not at the origin, right? Because if this plane was created at the origin, what would those values be? 0, 0, 0. It's like negative x, 2 on the y, and negative on the z. So it's not at the origin at all. So what did it do? It placed the object in the center of my screen. Okay? So game object, I'm going to create a plane. Where is it? There it is. Yeah, it's going to try to place it in the center of the screen. Ish. Yeah?
Is that always the case? Because I opened up Unity at home and it placed it like on the negative above axis, like on the ground. It was on the ground plane, but it was
way off. You know, there's very likely there's something else influencing it. Point being, it's almost never going to go to the origin, nor where we want it to be. Okay? But luckily for us, we can reset this pretty easily. Now remember, our game objects really are a collection of a whole series of components, component pieces. Okay? We have the transform component, as we've described earlier, which defines its location and size inside of our scene. The mesh filter actually loads the geometry. The collider here, we'll talk about this in a minute. The collider allows us to create collision information for our game object. Okay? And there's a whole list of other components that we can add to our game objects whenever we want. If you look at all these components, there is some common UI between them. Specifically, I want to draw focus to this little gear icon way over here. Now, under the transform component, this gear icon gives us a couple options. The one that I want to do is just reset, which is going to do what? You got it. It's going to zero out all the position and rotation values and put scale values to 1 across the XYZ. Boop, there it goes. Aha! Now it's right back down where I want it to go. All right, let's make it a little bit bigger. So something to walk around. It's looking pretty great. So now that we have a couple different pieces inside of our scene, the other stuff in our world now becomes a little bit more important, specifically the camera and the directional light. The main camera and the directional light that we see over there in a hierarchy, those are the default elements inside of any Unity scene file. These two. Let's look at the directional light first, much like it does over inside of Modo. Yeah, you can just barely see the icon for it chilling in the center there. Do you see it? Yeah. That's the directional light. If I fire off the move tool, of course I can move the directional light. But, like Modo, if I wanted to change the orientation of my shadows, which values do I need to change? Rotation. Just like over in Modo. That's kind of a good thing about working inside of this space, is that the transform stuff is identical. So this is where we go inside of our interface to find the move, rotate, and scale. Does anyone want to take a guess as to what their keyboard shortcuts are? Bingo. W, E, and R. Just like they are in every other 3D app. Thank you, Unity. You're making my life easier. There's a few, less keyboard shortcuts to remember. So W, E, and R. Okay. So if I fire off the rotation tool, these lights are actually real time. Okay, which is pretty cool. We used to didn't have real-time lights and with real-time shadows inside of Unity. It's actually pretty neat. This is actually pretty difficult for a real-time rendering engine to calculate for us. So we can. The cool thing about the cool thing about real-time is that it is almost a what you see is what you get environment. So if I don't like the shadows there, I can move them. Oops, rotated the wrong one. There we go. And change the look of my scene all in real time, which is pretty great. Even changes the color. Isn't that rad? Changes the color of the light as if it's setting. Isn't that neat? Good times. All right. So we have the main camera. Okay. The main camera. Let's see. Where is the main camera? There it is. Way over there in the back. Okay. Now the cameras inside of Unity are physically what the gamer is going to see. Okay. So right now, if I was to start the game, this is the view my gamer is going to see. Right? With the camera selected, we get to instantaneously see what's going on. Okay? If I hit the gigantic play button, we'll start our game. Boop. And there it is. All right.
Can you move around? Or?
Let's see. Can we move around? I'm doing ASWD right now. Negative, right? Which brings us to the next bit. Okay? In order for our gamer to physically interact with the experiences and the environment that we've crafted, we need to create what's called a game controller. Okay? Imagine physically that this is like an Xbox One controller. Okay? But it's going to be all the crazy thinking and the logic is going to happen behind the scenes. Now we're going to be talking a lot about game controllers going forward into the future in 426. That's a deep rabbit hole. It's a very, very deep rabbit hole. We'll talk more about that in 426. But I want you guys to get up and running. There's some presets that are fantastic that allows us just to throw them in real fast and start running around our game like in a first-person shooter. Okay? I'm going to stop my game. FYI, your game is running while this play button is on. Command P is the keyboard shortcut to start and stop your game. All right, now that I've stopped my game, I can go in and start looking at where I can start to add these prefabs in. And I want you to remember that word. They're called prefabs. Here in the Unity space, what used to be a preset over in Modo is called a prefab over here in Unity. Very similar. Huh? It's pretty fabulous, yeah. That was a good one. If the Unity developers are listening to our live stream, they should use that joke every time they say that, because it's an excellent, excellent one. Great job, Grant. All right. So we need to import in some assets that will expose these prefabs for us. And it's really easy to do this. The easiest way to do this is to go into the Assets pull-down menu. Here we go. Okay. So import package. And then I believe it's under cameras. They change some things around every once in a while, so I'm hoping that's under cameras. So the cameras are characters. We'll do both just so we can see what it looks like. Now these packages, think of them like gigantic collections of stuff. Yeah. is under characters. We'll do characters here. Yeah, these packages are gigantic collections of things, right? So a package like the environment package, don't quote me on this, but the environment package can include like tree models and textures and other things that you would use to populate your entire scene with things, okay? So they're more than just kind of little bits of code, although they can just be code too. Now, these are the ones that come with Unity, but we can make our own asset libraries. In a larger construct of a game, a big team, they'll create an entire package for all the art assets that are used in a level or used in a game. That way, when a game designer rolls in and they're starting to populate a level, there's a cohesive look and feel to all the art assets throughout the game, right? Because they're all working with inside the same asset library. Let's load in the characters. Now, does anyone want to take a guess? Oops. As to where all this stuff is going to go? Assets. You got it. You're going to get this little popover? This is really just going to allow us to determine what we want to load in. I want to load in everything from this package. So I'll leave everything selected and hit import. And there's a lot of stuff that's coming in from this package. So I'm going to let it cook for a couple seconds. Maybe perhaps more than a couple seconds. Compiling scripts, compiling scripts. Whole bunch of stuff. Here we go. Excuse me. Aha. All right. So check it out. Down here in our directory. Let's see if I can make this bigger. No. All right. Anyways. And I was a bad boy. I had my materials folder selected when I hit that import asset, and all of my assets went into my materials folder, which is not what I wanted. Let's see. Can I drag it up? Yeah. Okay, there we go. All right. So you can reorder the structure down here just by dragging and dropping. These are just folders. There's nothing magical about them, okay? All right, well, here's all of the stuff that came in that characters package, okay? And specifically, let's go into the characters. And here it is. There's three. We have a first-person controller, a roller ball, which is kind of fun, and then a third-person controller. For today, I think I'm just going to use the first-person controller. So if we open it up, what we're looking for here are the prefabs. The prefabs is a whole series of things that are all it's a game object that has a whole series of game components associated with it. There it is. We have two prefabs. Prefabs are denoted by the little blue cubes inside of Unity. And I'm simply going to drag and drop this into my hierarchy and check it out. Now, right now, it's at the origin of my scene, so I want to move my character around or my prefab back a little bit. Aha, whoops. There it is. There's my prefab. Okay. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there. This little capsule represents our character. Can you guys see on the projector that little green capsule? I recognize that it is very small and it may be difficult to see. But that little capsule, think of it as a virtual representation of your character size. Okay. Now what's cool about this prefab is that it comes with all the scripts that will make this little prefab, this little game character walk around our scene. So we don't have to code anything, which is nice. Okay. If we look at the contents of the inspector, we can see all the things. Check it out. Look at all the different components that this one prefab comes with. Of course, every component is going to have a transform, right, that defines its current location in the scene. You can't not have a transform. Okay. But then there's a whole bunch of prefab-specific stuff that determines, the size of our character, their walking speed. These are all scripts and variables that have been exposed inside the code that allows this prefab to do something different. It's cool, right? Yeah, C#. Yeah, C# is pretty rad. Let's go ahead and play our game here real fast. Because now that we have a game controller in here, I can play my game. Aha!
What the heck was that noise?
Whee! Yeah, so what's my big problem here? My house is really, really, really small, right? It's teeny tiny. Okay, so I have something to fix, okay? So I have two problems with my house. first and foremost, as we just said, it's small. Now, this looked okay over in Modo, right? We were like, thumbs up, this is awesome, sweet in Modo, but now that I put a prefab in there and started having multiple objects determine its scale, problems. So scale is now going to be an issue, okay? And we're going to talk about that very directly here in a moment. Now, the other one, which is really easy to resolve, is the following. What is my problem? I can totally walk through my house, right? Yeah. There's no collision on it whatsoever. And we'll talk about this, I think, next week. Woo! I can also fall off the edge of my map, too. So we have a couple things in here that we need to craft. And notice what's not happening.
You're not resetting.
I'm not resetting, right? Because there's nothing in the game that's telling me the game to reset itself. There's no kill zone. There's no scripts that says maybe you've fallen too far. There is nothing, okay? And this is probably one of the big inherent challenges of working in the real-time rendering space, is that nothing comes for free. We have to put everything in there, okay? Now, that in itself has its own series of challenges, but why is this actually a sandbox worth playing in? Bingo, exactly. We don't need a whole bunch of stuff. We only need to put in what we need, right? We're not bringing in this bloated kind of rendering environment. We're only putting in and asking the computer to draw exactly what we need to make our game work. Let me stop my game, Command P, and start talking about the scale issue, because that's something that we need to address early on. And you guys are going to need to address your understanding of scale this week as you start to transition all of your assets over into Unity. Okay, and getting this game to work, because that's our goal this week, is to have a simple little level that you can walk around. Okay, to get all your materials, all of your textures, and a simple scene like this ready to rock and roll. So let's talk about scale, because I have some problems in here. Now, I know from my experience that generally speaking, we don't want to scale our game controllers. Okay, this thing. Just kind of based on the loose conversation that we've had about the game controller, why don't we want to scale it up or scale it down? Let's look at the inspector real fast, and hopefully that'll give you some clarity.
The logic isn't going to scale. So
No.
the walk speed is still going to
It's going to be all off.
Yeah.
Your jump heights are going to be all off, right? The last thing that we want to do is adjust the game controller. Everything else gets adjusted to it, right? So in the larger sense of things, I need to make the geometry of my house bigger, right? Now, one of the other problems that we're going to run into, and this is usually where people kind of land, they'll, here, let's do this. I want to put my game controller over here, then, oops. I'm going to rotate them around. Okay. In addition, so of course we have our scene view, which is our authoring environment. We also have our game view. This is what physically the game is going to show us, right? In the game view, we can see that my house is just way too small, right? I'm like a giant right now, okay? That's not what I want my game to feel like. I'm going to do this. I'm going to take this tab, and I want to drag it down to the bottom. That way, we have both views on the screen at the same time. All right. So the other place that a lot of folks end up going is like, well, I'll just scale up my house, right? Problem solved. Done. Beer 30, right? Not the solution to our problem, right? I'm glad Frank got the joke. Not the solution to this is the last thing we want to do, right? Is to grab a game object like this, fire the scale tool up, and start making it bigger. Now, aesthetically, we're probably like, cool, this is working now. I'm generally in that scale space and the understanding of size that I want to be. But why is this bad? How big did I size this up? I don't know, right? Remember, this is going to be one piece of hundreds of pieces. We need to have a uniform understanding of scale, right? We need to figure out how big, generally speaking, all of our doorways need to be. How big is the box in Unity compared to a box in Modo, right? We need to have a baseline understanding of scale. That way we can reproduce that scale in Modo every single time, right? Because we want all of our assets. Think of it kind of like a lineup, right? Take every single asset, you line it up in a single row over in Modo, and they all should be scaled appropriately to each other. So the house should be pretty big, maybe the wine barrel should be pretty small, right? We want everything to have the exact same scale relationship. We don't want to be customizing that relationship here in Unity, because now it turns into an uncontrollable authoring environment.
I was just going to say, since the files are technically shared between Modo and Unity, can you make the adjustments in Modo?
Bingo. And that's where we're going to go.
Automatically changes in Unity?
Absolutely. But we need to have an understanding of how big we want things to be here in Unity first. What we're about to, I'm sorry, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, do you measure the player? Do you measure the player and then adjust it?
Yeah, what we're about to do is called white boxing. Okay? White boxing. Some people call it gray boxing, but a lot of people call it white boxing. And it's basically kind of flushing out our level with some basic rudimentary pieces in Unity first, so that we understand scale and proportion, right? With that understanding in tow, we then can take that back over into Modo and create an art asset that will match our understanding of scale here. So let's figure out what that system of scale could look like, okay? So every unit of measurement requires a measuring stick. Yeah, how are we going to measure things? There's not like a digital tape measure we can pull out, right? So we need some sort of measurement system.
Use real world measurements?
That Unity doesn't understand real world measurements. Let's check it out. No. In this crate, so this is the weird, wacky world that we live in, right? So here are the values that we get to play with in Unity. Position, rotation, and scale. Is this inches? Is this feet? Is it meters, millimeters, percentages? The answer is no. It's none of the above. It's game units. Okay? And that's literally what it's called. They're called game units, which are basically units that live outside of a traditional system of measurement, right? So how can we translate game units into real-world units, right? We use some logic. Let's explore what that logic is, right? Because one of the things that we have over in Modo is a real-world working unit of measurement, right? So if I can create some sort of translator, at least I have a starting point, right? And believe it or not, this is an old school trick, our translator is going to be a cube, okay? It's amazing how much this little cube comes back to play with things, right? It's pretty fun. So, because we can build a unit primitive cube over in Modo, right? We can also build a Unity unit primitive cube here as well, right? Let's explore how they are the same or are they different, okay? So let's do it real fast. And this is going to help. All right, so let's go back over into Modo real fast. And I'm going to create a new project file. And simply in this project file, I'm just going to create a unit primitive cube. Okay? Held down the Shift key, it added a unit primitive cube into my 3D scene. There she blows. Looking good, by the way. Let's export this out. This is all I'm doing. I don't need anything in here. Export it out as an FBX. And I'm going to call this file Modo Cube. Right? There we go. Let's go back over into Unity and import that Modo Cube. All right. There it is. There's my Modo Cube. Woo! Looking good. All right. Excuse me. All right, let's get that Modo Cube in here. There it is. So the origin of our scene, looking pretty good. Let's give it, it has, I didn't change any of the values, so I'm just going to change its color on its material to red. Okay, so red cube equals Modo Cube. And let's do this. Let's create a new material. Create material. And I'm going to call this blue. And I'll make its albedo color green. No, that's confusing. That was a joke, by the way. You're allowed to laugh at that. Okay, Mike got it. Remember when I was in high school, there was these guys that made a band. They thought they were like the coolest guys in the entire school, right? And they had a band. Their band name was Red, right? But they were being hipsters and cool, so it was R-H-E-D, Red. And then, of course, the letters were green. Right. Edgy, yeah. Crazy, right? Okay, anyways, all right. So the red guy is going to be my Modo cube, right? And now I'm going to create a Unity cube. Here's one of the cool things you can do in Unity. Oops, there we go. So I want that blue material that I just created to go in my cube. Just drag and drop. Woo! There it goes. All right. You know, they're not exactly in the same space. So let's get them on the same space. I want to snap them to my ground. Here's a great keyboard trick. One that I would recommend that you use going forward at every single level. It's Vertex Snapping. Hit the V key. V is in Vertex, V is in Victor. Wherever I place my cursor, my tool handles. Can you guys see that? I apologize. I know it's kind of hard. You'll see it. Let me zoom in a little bit. So I'm holding down the V key with the Move tool active. And now it's going to snap to the verts that are on that object. Okay? And if I left click and drag, it will snap to the other verts. Okay? It's a quick way of aligning things. Same thing. There we go. All right. So, red cube, Modo cube, blue cube, Unity cube. What can you tell me? How do they look? They're identical. Okay? So now we've created our translator. A unit primitive cube in Modo is the exact same size as the unit primitive cube over in Unity. Okay? Now we have a consistent language and understanding of scale between the two apps. We can use this. Okay?
Will it always be that way or no?
It's working this way now. I can't speak for the future. This is why we test it, just to make sure. All right. So, how can we use this? This is cool. Check this out. So if I know, I'm going to get rid of my Modo cube. Oops. Yep. Right-click, delete. There we go. If I know that in Modo, if the cube size in Modo and Unity are the same, maybe I can use these cubes as kind of like my little fictitious measuring stick. Okay? How big do I want my door to be? Well, the only way to get the answer to that question is to create a door and then play it. And if it feels okay, then that's where we're going to be, right? Let's check it out. So I want to play my game. How big do I want my door to be? So right now, it's way too small. Well, I don't know how big that door is going to be. Let's prototype it. Let's get a specific answer to that question. I want to use these cubes as my measuring stick. Okay? So I'm going to create a simple door, and I'm going to duplicate this little cube. So you can duplicate it. Command D will also allow you to duplicate a game object. And I'm going to start stacking them. These is where the vertex snapping really comes in. So now you can do Command D, pull out another one. V for vertex snapping. Let's see, is 3 cubes too high? I don't know. Let's find out. Command D again. There we go. So I want to make a little doorway here. How many cubes wide is it going to be? 1? Let's find out. I really don't have the answer to that question. That's why we're doing this. To get a good understanding of how big things need to be with simple building blocks, and then we can translate that back over to models over in Modo. Okay? This is called white boxing. Very rudimentary geometry that helps us understand scale and proportion and layout. Once we get more into this, we're going to be laying out our entire level. That's going to come in the next couple of weeks. All right, I want to duplicate this entire thing. V key. All right, there's a door. Now, on the surface it seems too narrow, but we won't know for sure until we play it, right? Because we're playing the game. Where's my door? There it is. All right. Yep, definitely too narrow. I can't even walk through there, right? This game controller, just physically not possible. Height-wise, yeah, 3 is probably good. If I jump up, yeah. If I jump up, I'll probably hit my head on top of the door jamb. It feels right to me, and that's kind of where we're going. Yes, ma'am?
What if your character's really skinny and you want him to be able to fit into tiny spaces?
Different.
Is there a way to just shrink the character's width?
Yeah, actually, that little green capsule is the collider itself. And you can go into this specific first-person controller. Where is it? Yes, it is. It's the character controller. And I think it's this radius value that will physically make it narrower. All right. So with that information in mind, I know that a 1 width door, not big enough. So I want to move these out of the way. Command D to duplicate, move it around, V key to snap, grab these guys over here again, snap them into play. Now let's play the game again, see how we're doing. There's my door. Yeah, that feels a little bit better. Maybe a little too low. So maybe I'll make it a 4 cube height with a 2 cube width. Now I have some very real numbers that I can take back over into Modo, right? This is no longer just kind of my artistic understanding of scale. We're putting some numbers behind it. Okay, let's do it. I'm not going to make the latest revision. All right, so back in Modo. Now here, I'm going to scale up this entire item, right? All the polygons are going to get scaled up. Let's make my measuring stick once again. Let's do it. So, yeah, you can already see how big that thing is, right? Now, I think I'm just going to work at the component level here. It's copy paste. Oops, apparently I did not hit copy. Here, I'll just hold down Control and Shift and drag out a new version. So I need, what, 4 of these? There we go. And now I'll snap them using my Vertex Snapping system together. There we go. So the whole idea here is that we're not changing the scale of the cubes. Everything else is getting scaled to the cube. So what I've established, this is the height of the door. Let's turn my rough back on. Yeah, I am so very off on this, right? Let's go to my model. And I think I'm going to change my viewport draw style to wireframe. In addition, I'm also going to change my action center to origin so that when I scale up the polygons, now I'm scaling polys, not items. Not items, okay? Scaling up your items is going to translate over into Unity. We work at the component level. That way we don't have that translation happen. Fire off the scale tool. And now, let's see. This is the doorway. This is the chimney over here. So what I'm looking for, here, let me go back to my, excuse me. That was a bad boy. I forgot to center this object.
I think that's like the 3rd time you said bad.
I'm a bad boy?
Yes.
Yeah. It happens. All right, oops. There we go. All right, let's get my snapping engine back. There we go. Snap there. Oops. Turn my action center back off. Then I can snap. Then I'll change my snap parameters to grid. There we go. All right. And I am close. Now I want the bottom of this line to be generally in line with the bottom of the arc of the door, and that's pretty good. Okay. I won't do the width because it's like watching paint dry, but this is the whole idea behind it. Okay. So now I'm going to re-export this model out. So I have nothing selected. So if nothing's selected, everything on that item is going to get scaled. All right. So let's export this thing out again. And I'm actually going to put it in my assets folder. It is. Actually, I'll do this. I'll make it 2 different ones. That way we can compare. I'll name this one Forge Scaled. And since I saved it, since I saved it right into my assets folder, it automatically imported into Unity, which is pretty cool. So there it is, Forge Scaled. I'm not going to worry about all the materials and what have you at the moment. I just want to see if it works. Boom. Aha! Let's make my ground bigger. Take good old Forge Scaled here. Now I got a big house and a tiny house. Let's run through my game. There's my tiny house, not scaled, versus another guy.
Can you collide with it?
Yeah. So I think some of the proportions are still off, but my door size is right. Yeah. I think I probably should have scaled it to so the arc was at the top of my 4th brick instead of the bottom. That way, but I'm in the ballpark. I'm much closer now to what I need it to be than what I did before, right? Yep. And I think proportionally, now I can understand from an art perspective what changes I need to make, right? From an art perspective, man, if this is actually some sort of like chimney or forge, it's way too high. The gamer's never going to be able to work with this. So I need to bring it down. In every sense, this white boxing system illustrates instantly the changes that we need to make to the model to make it work inside the game. Because remember, Modo takes us into this uncanny valley instantly, right? We can get as close to our models as we want. We lose objectivity on scale in Modo, right? Because we can get as close to it as we want or as far away from it as we want. Here in the game space, these game controllers determine what our gamer is going to see. We design our models around this view now versus what we saw in Modo, okay? Yep. I mean, window height is maybe a little high. Yep. Yeah, maybe the overall ceiling height is, I don't know, that feels a little too high. But it's not horrible.
How would you fix that?
Going back over to Modo and start moving things around and making it and ensuring that what I'm creating in Modo kind of works inside of this system of scale here. Yeah, there's really, now that we're working in the real-time rendering world, where this is going to be what the gamer plays with, it's an organic kind of workflow. We build something in Modo, we throw it into Unity, see how it works, right?
I think it's kind of like the controller, the player you're playing in Unity is kind of already scaled. I want to say that like 6 feet or something, because when I made my house, I scaled it to size to where the walls were like 10 feet high, and it's like perfect when I imported it in.
The big picture idea is that we have some sort of numerical value that we can hang on to. If in your understanding it's 6 feet, I'm cool with that. In my understanding, a door is 4 blocks high. It's the same as 6 to 1, half a dozen to another. We just got to know. We can't rely upon our own kind of like monkeying around with the scale widget inside of Unity to make this work, because all of the assets need to have the exact same relationship to scale with each other, right? That way, when I bring in, a crate, okay, I just drop it in, I shouldn't have to change the scale value of that crate. It should automatically be sized correctly into my world. Does that make sense? Okay. Last thing, and then I'll let you guys get to work, because I know you guys got a bunch of things ahead of you to do, okay? Last thing, our problem. This is all about solving problems today, Whee! Although that was fun, right? Running through my house. And yes, I actually modeled the inside of the house. There's physically not a door to open the inside, but I modeled it anyways because I'm just crazy like that. So here's the inside of my house. You know, I want to. That was weird. Both my cell phone and Miranda, was that yours? Went off at the exact same time, and my knee-jerk reaction is, "Oh God, something's happened." That was just weird timing. Anyways, okay. So I need to make sure that I can stop. These are called colliders. They're really easy to make inside of Unity. We're going to talk a lot about colliders going forward in the future. Okay. But upon import, there's one thing that we can do to very quickly turn our colliders on. I'm going to stop the game. I'm going to do this on, I'll do it on my forge, my little forge. So we do it down here. We click on it. Then over here in our inspector, you find the option that we're looking for under the Model tab. And it really is as easy as generate colliders. There are other ways that we can create that, and we will explore those ways in the future. But for this week, let's just turn generate colliders on. Now the thing that we got to do, you only make this mistake once or twice. You haven't done anything until you hit the big button that says apply. Okay? Now, the computer's gone through, and what it's done is looked at every single polygon inside of this mesh object itself, and it's created a collider, a physical, invisible wall. Okay? Yeah, let's do it. Command P to play my game. Now, I did it on my little house. Clunk, clunk, clunk. Yeah, it looks at every polygon and creates an invisible wall. On the surface, and like I said, we're going to talk more about how we can optimize this going forward. This is not a really efficient way to working, but for this week and for what we're doing, this is going to get us up and running. Okay, we'll talk about how we can optimize our collision system going forward in the future. It's pretty neat, and you guys will like it. Yes, ma'am.
And at home, it works sometimes, and
Here it doesn't.
And here it definitely doesn't.
You know what I would do in that particular situation? Are you using the first-person controller prefab? Delete it, re-import the package, and then add it back in again.
I just did that.
It's the same thing?
Yeah.
We'll figure it out.
It's weird because at home, it does work.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I open it and it
Interesting.
doesn't work, and the next time I open it, it works fine. So I'm not really sure.
Which first-person controller prefab are you using? Try rigid body. See if you get the same or different results. Yeah, just delete all that stuff.
Should I delete the whole character folder?
Down in your assets folder, no, that doesn't. Yeah, leave that as it is. That's probably fine. All right, so I'll make the Dropbox live here in a second, but here's our mission this week: is to get everything out of Modo and into Unity. I also want you to make a small, simple little environment, kind of like I've done here. Get your blacksmith shop in there, get all the materials and textures in there, and get that first-person controller prefab in there too. That way we can walk around our game and start having fun. Sound good? That's our goal this week. Yeah, pretty cool, huh? The rest of the semester is going to be in Unity, so welcome to your new home away from home. All right, we're going to be spending a lot of time in Unity over the next couple weeks, so hold on, as they say. It's going to be fun. Questions, comments? Yeah. What part? Is there anything that I can help with? Great. I did. I live streamed today. Well, and I think maybe the really important things to remember, okay, is the export from Modo, the import into Unity, and then adding that first-person controller prefab. Okay. So there's just really kind of three big steps. Okay.
Can you go over adding the character again?
Yeah, it's wicked easy. the first thing we got to do, and I'm losing my voice. That's awesome. I have no idea how Thursday is going to go for me, but we'll find out. All right, so adding that character is real easy. It's part of a package. So you got to import the package first. Did you do that, Josh? No. Okay. So assets, import package. And specifically, what we're looking for here is the characters package. Right there. Okay, go ahead and load it in. It'll take a couple seconds.
Sometimes if you jump on it just right, it rolls out. I made all of that.
You need to stop taking my classes and get a job already.
I would like that. I would very much like that.
That's awesome.
Someone
Good
who
job.
will hire me.
Really good job.
Ready.
I think you're ready. I think you've been ready.
For the next class, we're just going to be